Hello, my name is Juro and welcome to another Baldur's Gate 3 build video. In today's video, I'll be showing you my Faerie Fire Bard build, which will be a bard that's going to focus on primarily casting Faerie Fire spell, which is going to allow us, if enemies fail the saving throw, we'll have advantage against them. I think this is a quite powerful spell, although you have to be careful. Normally, if you cast this on your allies, they will also have to roll this dexterity save, and if they fail, then enemies will have an advantage against them. Now, how we're going to sort of counteract this is what I decided to do was I ended up getting 2 levels of wizard, specifically evocation, since Faerie Fire is an evocation spell, and the feature of the evocation school actually allows us to make it so that the Faerie Fire will actually ignore our allies and only focus, or only enemies will have to roll this dexterity save. Now, of course, if you don't care about that, you could just go as a full-on 12 levels College of Lore bard instead. But I will be going through the route where I went with 2 levels of wizard. So let's get into the character creation. So for our race, I decided to go as a Dragonborn. This doesn't really mean too much. You can go with any race you may prefer. One race that might be better than the others, potentially as for bards, is a human. Humans gain shield proficiency, so you can get extra 2 armor class in the early game on top of your other light armor, since as a bard you will be wearing mostly light armor in the early game. Another thing that, since we're going to be multi-classing with a wizard, we'll be able to wear robes and use mage armor with them instead of being just focused around primarily using light armor. But anyway, for a sub-race, again, I just went with silver. I tried to recreate one of the fail-safe characters you get if you play as the Dark Urge and if Alfira is knocked out or she's dead. So you get this Dragonborn Bard as a fail-safe to visit you during the long rest. But anyway, for our class, we're going as a bard, of course, for the first level. And for our bard cantrips, we're going to be taking Vicious Mockery. I found myself using this quite a bit, since primarily I would try to debuff enemies, especially with some of our equipment. We'll be inflicting mental fatigue on them, which is then going to allow us to more easily debuff them with more powerful basically cloud control spells. Then for the second cantrip, if this would be your main face of the party, the character who's going to talk the most with NPCs, I would suggest taking the Friends cantrip, because this gives you a free advantage on charisma checks against non-hostile creatures. You just have to make sure that if you use this on somebody and you are going to stop concentrating or it's going to run out, you leave the area before they actually accuse you of enchanting them. If this is not your main phase of the party, then my suggestion would be to take Light. Light is a very useful cantrip on, for example, Act 2, or if you have a preference, you could take any one of these other ones, but we will have plenty of cantrips anyway, because we're going to get also on top of these ones, we're going to get our wizard cantrips as well. For the spells, what we're going to go with is, of course, Faerie Fire. Not this one, Faerie Fire. This is going to be the main one we're going to be concentrating on, and we're going to be getting benefits for us and our entire team, because of course all targets within the light turn visible and attack rolls against them have advantage. So a pretty useful spell there for a level 1 that's a 60 feet radius. It's pretty good. Or the distance is, the radius doesn't show. For the second spell, I'd like to take the Dissonant Whispers. This is going to synergize greatly with our equipment, because we will be able to apply some debuff effects on enemies that when they take psychic damage from us. So what this does, it deals 3d6 psychic damage. It frightens the creature and they have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls, and they cannot move. If they save against the wisdom saving throw, they still take half damage, so you deal damage to them regardless. For the third spell, I'd like to take usually Heroism, but since we are a bard and we would have access to Calm Emotions is, I think, just an upgrade to Heroism, because it can work as an AoE for the entire party. Instead, if you don't have a character with Long Strider, I would suggest taking Long Strider here. This is going to boost your entire party's speed by 10 feet, and this is a ritual spell if cast outside of combat, so it's a pretty good one at that. Then for our last spell, since we will be going as an evocation wizard a little bit, I think Thunderwave is going to be worth it here, because it will scale with our charisma, but it's going to take on the passive of evocation wizard, where it's going to ignore our allies and push only our enemies away and damage them as well. So we're going to be taking Thunderwave here. For the starting instrument, this is completely up to you. Take your preference. And then for ability scores, we're going with 16 dexterity, 14 constitution, 10 intelligence, and 17 charisma. 16 dexterity just here to get us a little bit more armor class, and we can if we want to shoot our ranged weapons or use our melee weapons, which will be mostly finesse based. 40 Constitution is going to help us with a little bit of HP. Now, preferably we would want to have 16 here, but we have only so many points and we kind of had to make sacrifices somewhere, and so I decided to do it here. It is going to be just fine though, so nothing to worry, too much to worry about there. Intelligence 10. Normally, I would go with 10 Wisdom or 10 Strength, but we're going to go with 10 Intelligence. Reason being is that's going to allow us at Wizard level 2 to have 2 Wizard spells. And what we can do with that is we'll have access to the Mage Armor and Shield spell if we're wearing a robe and not armor, which is a pretty good boost to our defenses. And then lastly, Charisma 17. Of course, we're a bard. We want this to be our highest stat. This is going to help us with our spell casting, and that is going to be our primary focus of this character. Now for the skill proficiencies, since we are a bard, we get a lot of skills here. And since this is a main phase of the party, you could take Persuasion and Performance. Performance is going to help you with if you want to use your bardic, performance charm, so to say, to get boosted. You could use that, but in my case, this wasn't the phase of the party, and I would then suggest putting it into Perception, Investigation, and then any one other of these isn't too great. Sleight of hand you would normally have some on somebody else. You could make this an emergency sleight of hand character. Arcana, History, Nature, Religion, Animal Handling, Medicine isn't too great. Survival is great for maybe new players, but recently I've learned, and a lot of people have been mentioning, that you don't have to actually roll the save successfully. You can just dig in the close area where the cache is with the shovel action, and you can get it out. So, but I still prefer having one character with survival anyway, because sometimes you can just save you a click, or it can save you if you miss where the area is, but it's completely up to you, so you can put survival there. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it into athletics. This is going to help us against resist shove and help us shove enemies as well. Alright, so at level 2 we gain some of our nice bard features. For example, Jack of all trades. Your vast experience makes you more likely to succeed in any undertaking. Add half your proficiency bonus rewarded down, or rounded down, or not rewarded down, rounded down, to ability checks that you're proficient in. So it is going to help you succeed some ability checks. But the nice one we get here is the Song of Rest. So basically with this you get a third short rest, which is pretty good. This allows you to go a little bit further instead of having to long rest quite as often. Then for our spells here, for now we could go with Tasha's Hideous Laughter or Sleep. This is going to be quite useful in the early game. We can later on switch this out for something else. So I'm going to take Sleep for now. At level 3, we unlock our subclass and we unlock some other things here. For example, as a bard, we gain additional skills. So now you have quite a few choices here. Now my suggestion would be, since we can actually put one of the expertise points into perception, we're going to go do that. Same thing with insight. And then the 3 of these I will put into acrobatics. And then we have kind of choices of these really mediocre ones. So you might as well put it into some stuff you maybe don't have. You could get sleight of hand and then put expertise to boost your lockpicking here even more, but for my example it is unnecessary, so I'm just gonna go with history, with arcana, and let's say with acrobatics, and then I don't know, let's go survival, since I do like to have one character with survival list, and we can do it with this character. Now for the second level spells that we get, my suggestion is to take Calm Emotions right off the bat, because at level 3 you would be at a point where you would most likely go and deal with the harpies, and this spell single-handedly can counter that encounter completely. So it's a very useful one to have there. Then for a subclass, we are going with the College of Lore. College of Lore is great because you use your wits to distract a creature and sap its confidence. Now what this means is you add your bardic inspiration as a penalty to the enemy's saving throw. So potentially if, for example, they succeed hold person and they roll, let's say difficulty class is 12 and they roll a 12, they just save. With cunning words you can make them fail. So you increase your, so to say, spell save DC a little bit. This also works for your allies' actions as well. So, and you can help also your allies against enemies as well. So it's a real useful feature all around. Abilities we just changed up, so we can move on. At level 4, we unlock an additional cantrip, and here I will just go with Mage Hand. Mage Hand is quite useful. All of these ones aren't anything wild, but Mage Hand and Minor Illusion are probably the most useful ones here. Now for the spells, I would suggest taking Hold Person. Hold Person is amazing to have. It's a really great spell to have basically against any humanoid enemies. Now at this point we could switch out the Sleep, because We'll primarily anyway try to use Faerie Fire, but Sleep can be nice since it's not countering. You could keep it and then replace it later when we get more powerful spells. For our feats, we're going to go with Ability Improvement +2 into Charisma. This is going to give us greater spell save DC and attack rolls, and of course, that's going to give us greater combat effectiveness with our spells. Now at level 5, we gain a big boost to our Bard generally because we get Font of Inspiration. You regain all your Bardic Inspiration after a long or a short rest, so we now have way more Bardic Inspirations to work with. On top of that, it also gets upgraded from a 1d6 to a 1d8, which is great. For our spells, we also have unlocked 3rd level spells, and here I would suggest taking Hypnotic Pattern. Hypnotic Pattern is great because it's a very large AoE, and if enemies or any creature that fails a saving throw is basically going to skip their turns for 2 turns. Now do keep in mind, this can target your allies and even yourself, and if that happens, well, you instantly break concentration and you actually skip your turn, so beware of that. At level 6, we are going to actually start our multi-class. Now, we do get magical secrets at level 6, but we're going to forgo that for now, and we're going to go as a wizard. Now, for our wizard cantrips, since we have only 10 intelligence and they will scale with our intelligence, we don't want any offensive ones. Instead, you might just take these supportive ones, or if you take the damage ones, just take them off your hotbar so that you don't accidentally try and use them, because you will most likely miss with this low intelligence. Now, for the spells that we have here, we could take Sleep here, because this doesn't require a spell save DC, and we can replace it later on, or we could have replaced it at level 5, for example, and get something like Enhanced Ability. But the ones that I would heavily suggest to take is Mage Armor and Shield. Mage Armor is going to boost your armor class to 13 plus your dexterity if you're not wearing armor, so we can now start wearing robes, specifically the Potent Robe. Until this point, we would most likely be wearing light armor. Magic Missile is great because it also doesn't require a spell save DC, spell save or attack roll, because it is of course a guaranteed damage unless enemies has shield spell themselves. Another one that's great here is Protection from Evil and Good. This also doesn't require any high DCs or attack rolls. And then for the rest of these ones, you could just take Enhanced Sleep, or like I mentioned, Sleep, and then we can replace later. If we need it, we can just take it. But as you can see, we get only one spell for now, and then next level we get a second one. But since we would want to wear our robe now, we're gonna go with Mage Armor. At level 7, we get our Wizard Supplementary go with Evocation, because what it does here is you sculpt spells, you create pockets of safety within our Evocation spells, allies automatically succeed their saving throws against these spells and they take no damage from them. So this now we're basically able to freely cast Faerie Fire whenever we want to, and our allies will be completely safe from it. And then for the spells, again, just take whichever ones you want, we won't be using them really. And then here for the second spell, we're going to take Shield. So these are going to be basically the two spells that we're going to have equipped at all times. If we at some point decide to wear light armor, we can remove Mage Armor and then get Sleep, or maybe Protection from Evil and Good, or Enhanced Sleep, so we can buff our allies with that as well. So that's going to be up to you, but we're going to go with Mage Armor here. Now finally at level 8, it is quite late, but we do get our magical secrets finally. But before that, let's get our third level spell. We could get Enhanced Ability. Now you could also get this earlier if you replace Sleep with it, for example. This is a great one, but if you have a Bard, or not Bard, but a Cleric or a Druid with it, then you don't necessarily need it. For example, I do have a character already with this, so I will not be taking it here. Instead, what you could take is Fear. Fear is quite nice because it makes enemies drop their weapons and then run away from you. Or you could take something like the Cloud of Daggers or Heat Metal. For Cloud of Daggers is going to damage enemies in a area around them, and then Heat Metal will give them disadvantage attack rolls if they have a metal weapon. But what I'm going to go with is going to be the Lesser Restoration, in case I do need it if I don't have any of the arrows, but normally you would have them. So you have quite a bit of choices here to take whichever ones you prefer. For the magical secrets, we're going to of course take the Misty Step, probably the best mobility spell in the game. And then for the second one, if you don't have anybody with Counterspell, this is where I would suggest you to take Counterspell. Now it is a little bit later than normal, but still it's worth it because Counterspell is such a nice spell to counter really nasty spells from your enemies. At level 9, we unlock our 4th level spells. And here, we're going to go with Confusion. Confusion is basically almost like an upgraded version of the Hypnotic Pattern. It lasts for 3 turns, and it confuses enemies to either make them attack their allies, skip their turns, or wander aimlessly. Now, this also doesn't target your allies, so there's also a upgrade there, so you don't need to worry about where you target this. At level 10, we unlock another 4th level spell slot, or another spell slot, and we can get another spell. And here I would suggest taking Dimension Door. Dimension Door is great if you need to transport your allies away from an area, especially useful when you're trying to rescue a certain duke. And then at this point, we get our second feat, and we are going to go for the Warcaster here. This is going to help us prevent enemies from breaking our concentration saving throws easily, especially since we don't have equipment that is going to help us with that anymore. At level 11, we unlock our 5th level spells, and here we're gonna go with, of course, Hold Monster. Hold Monster is an amazing spell, which, of course, paralyzes a creature, so it works against non-humanoids. Basically, same rank as Hold Person, just amazing spell all around. Then finally, at level 12, we gain additional skills, 2 to be exact. And here we don't have too many choices. We could go investigation. Investigation is great. Survival we don't need, especially at this point. And then persuasion we wouldn't need because we wouldn't talk with this character unless this is your main phase of the party. Same thing with Arcana. So my suggestion would be either athletics or acrobatics. You could even them out like this, so they are both 7+7, or just go with full-on acrobatics. Completely up to you. Now for the cantrip, again, we're just going to pick one random one. It doesn't matter, we won't be using it because, for example, Blade Ward, there is way better ways to get Blade Ward onto characters, and True Strike isn't all that great. Now for the last spell, here I would suggest taking Dominate Person or Planar Binding. They basically do the same thing. Hold Person works on humanoids, and Planar Binding works on enemies that are Celestial, Elementals, Fae, or Fiends. So basically what happens is they switch sides for 10 turns and they fight for you, and then after this duration is finished, or if you break concentration, they get back to being hostile. So I'm just going to take Hold Person here, not Hold Person, the Dominate Person. We also unlock some new magical secrets, and here I would suggest that you could take, for example, Banishing Smite if you want to try and attack your enemies with it, although since we will have relatively low dexterity here, and we can at some point get Mirror of Loss to +2 dexterity or charisma to boost it up. I did also forget to mention that with Anti-Ethel Seer, if you do go with this character, get charisma, so you get a nice 20 here, and then through our equipment get to higher than that. But anyway, for the spell choices here, you could also take the Thunderous Smite. That's another one smite you get if you do decide to go for 18 dexterity instead of charisma. Spirit Guardians are also great here, but I would suggest going with Hunger of Hadar. Hunger of Hadar is great because what it does is creatures within it are blinded, they're also slowed, and they take 2d6 cold damage or 2d6 acid damage, depending on, basically at the start of their turn, they take cold damage, and if they end their turn inside of this big area effect, they take acid damage then. So it's a really good area denial spell. Now, for these other ones, you have quite a lot of choices, to be honest. So you could go with something like the Fire Shield if you want to be defensive, Wall of Fire, which is a great also area denial spell. Or another defensive one is, for example, Armor of Agathis. And I think I'll go with this one because this can provide you with additional cold damage hit points, which when enemies hit you, they take cold damage while you reduce your hit points. But even if you have one temporary hit points, if you upgrade this to, let's say, level 6, you still deal full damage while you, instead of just dealing 1. So Armor of Agathis is another great one there. But yeah, you have a lot of choices here. Just take the ones that you may preferably like. I just don't want to go through over them because that would be quite a while. All right, so that is it for the levels. I will now see you in the equipment section. All right, so here we are in the equipment section. So let's start with our headgear. So here we have the Birthright, Charisma +2 up to 22. So this is going to basically boost our spellcasting to up to 22. This is going to give us spell save DC and attack rolls, so help us all around with our bardic spellcasting. Pretty great hat. For the other game alternatives, you could take the Shade Spell Circle, which gives you +1 to spell save DC. We want spell save DC because we don't really have access to spells or cantrips that are requiring attack rolls. So we're primarily spell save DC based spellcaster. You could also take, for example, the Fistbreaker Helm, which also gives you +1 to spell save DC, and it gives you bonus to initiative rolls, so another great piece there. Circle of Mental Anguish is actually quite decent on a bard, because when an enemy fails a Charisma, Intelligence, or Wisdom saving throw against one of your spells or cantrips, you gain 1d4 hit points. And this works, of course, with our Vicious Mockery, because it's a Wisdom save, so you can get a little bit of health there. And then lastly, for the late game alternative, you could go with Hood of the Weave, which gives you a +2 bonus to spell save DC and attack rolls. Now, Hood of the Weave, I think, is just outright better than Birthright because 2 charisma rounds out to 1 spell save DC and attack roll, while the Hood of the Weave gives you a flat +2. So you can choose between these two, whichever one you would want to take. For the cloak, we're going with the Cloak of Displacement. Basically, what this cloak does at the beginning of a turn, it activates and gives you the effect of Blur, so enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls against you. For the alternative defensive cloak, you get to go, of course, with the Cloak of Protection. This gives you +1 to armor class and saving throws. Or if you want one that gives you extra spell save DC and attack rolls, you go with, of course, with the Cloak of the Weave. Is a great choice here as well. For armor, I went with the Potent Robe. Your cantrips deal additional damage equal to your charisma modifier, and at the beginning of your turn, the cloak activates, granting you temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier. So basically, if you take damage, this cloak heals you for the value of your charisma, which at this point would be a +6. For the alternatives, for the early game, I would suggest you take the Spider Silk armor. Since it's light armor and you're a bard, you'll have advantage on Constitution saving throw checks for free until you get to the point where you start wearing robes, and then you get the Warcaster. So you could wear this until you get Warcaster or until you get your wizard level so you can start wearing robes. And then the late game alternative you could take is the Robe of the Weave. You gain +1 bonus to spell save DC and attack rolls, and whenever you succeed a saving throw against the spell, you gain 1d6 hit points. So this is another one that will boost your spell casting in return for a little bit more armor class. Then you sacrifice basically the bonus damage you deal with your cantrips instead of spell save DC. I just chose Potent Robe because then I found myself using Vicious Mockery quite a bit, so there's that. But if you would cast spells at higher spell save DC instead, you can of course go with the Robe of the Weave. For the gloves, I went with the Brain Drain gloves. When you deal psychic damage, you also inflict mental fatigue for 2 turns. Now what this does is this gives enemies -1 penalty to wisdom, intelligence, charisma saving throws for every turn remaining. So this is great, since especially if we cast Vicious Mockery, which is a wisdom saving throw, this is going to then of course reduce the chances of enemies succeeding the next Vicious Mockery, or if you cast Hold Person, Hold Monster on them, they're gonna have even a lower chance then as well, or something like Hypnotic Pattern or Confusion. So this is a pretty good one for stacking debuffs on more powerful enemies and then making sure that you succeed, or that they fail the saving throw against something like Hold Monster, for example. For the boots, I went with the Boots of Speed. This gives you click heals, a bonus action dash. So these are great mobility boots that just lets you dash every turn if you have free bonus actions, especially if you aren't shooting your dual wielder crossbows, for example. The other alternative you could take is the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. So basically you can't be enwebbed, entangled, and snared, you can't sleep on grease or ice, and you gain 1 Misty Step per short rest, so in total you get 3 extra Misty Steps, so you don't have to use up your spell slots on Misty Steps. For the amulet, we're going with the Amulet of Misty Step. Like the boots, you gain 1 Misty Step per short rest, so you get another 3 extra to save up your spell slots. For the alternatives, I was just taking more of the defensive amulets, for example, the ones that give you advantage on wisdom saving throws. The difference is this one gives you shield, and then Face Amulet Amulet gives you another intelligence and charisma advantage on wisdom on saving throws. Or you could also take the Amulet of the Unworthy, grants resistance to slashing damage but vulnerability to bludgeoning damage. Now, there is a lot more slashing damage in the game than there is bludgeoning, so there is that, but of course, if you do encounter enemies that are dealing heavy bludgeoning damage, you would want to unequip this because they will hurt you quite a lot. Then for our rings, we're going with the Strange Conduit Ring. While concentrating on a spell, the wearer's weapon attacks deal additional 1d4 psychic damage. So if you do choose to use your hand crossbows or your melee weapons, you can deal additional psychic damage with this, on top of course, inflicting debuffs. And then our ring here is going to also synergize with this. So for Ring of Mental Inhibition, when a foe fails a saving throw against one of your spells or actions, they gain mental fatigue for 2 turns. So now if they fail a saving throw against your Vicious Mockery, they will now get 4 turns of what do you call it? Wrong ring. They'll get 4 turns of mental fatigue, so then next turn you can get a lot easier time of actually further debuffing them. For the link alternatives, you could take the Ring of Arcane Synergy. So if you do choose to go for more dexterity, you can use this ring to boost yourself with Arcane Synergy, which is going to increase your weapon attacks to deal damage equal to your spellcasting modifier. So then that's going to mean that you would deal, well, if you go Mirror of Lost, you would have 22 and then 18. So you would deal 6 extra damage with your weapons, your crossbows, or your, if you choose to have finesse-based melee weapons. Then the other ring you take is the Ring of Protection, armor class saving throws +1, and then lastly, finally, the Acoustic Band for more weapon attack damage. For our weapons, I decided to go here with the Staff of Spell Power and the Marco Headgear. So these two you would want because they grant you the Arcane Battery, alleviate an arcane burden of spellcasting with the power of the staff. The next spell you cast doesn't cost a spell slot, so you can save yourself a spell slot with these two staffs if you just switch between them once you use this. And of course, Marco Headgear has the Kareshka Sphere, which has a lot of other benefits on its own, which are elemental based. Now, yes, this character is a 6th level spellcaster, although we don't have any 6th level spells, like for example, Autolux, not always, but the dancing spell. I got a brain fart and I forgot the name. But yeah, we don't have our 6th level spells, but it's fine because, for example, we can upcast hold monster and then get 2 monsters to be immobilized by it, for example. Or we could just use it for Armor of Agathis. Then for a ranged weapon, I decided to go with Nermisser and Hellfire hand crossbow. Reason being, they are hand crossbows, so we are proficient with them. We can use them to shoot enemies, but namely because they grant us 2 additional spells. One is the Magic Missile. This is a 3rd level Magic Missile, and then the second one gives us the Scorching Ray, which is a also 3rd level Scorching Ray. So we have a little bit extra damage, and we should be a lot easier for us to hit enemies since we will most likely attack them with advantage because of our Faerie Fire. Then another thing. For our elixirs, I don't have them here, but the elixir I was suggested to take in the early game would be the elixir of Peerless Focus until you get the Warcaster, so you can forego the Spider Silk armor earlier if you go with the Potent Robe. And then in the late game you would want the elixir of Battle Mage's Prowess, which is going to give you +3 to spell save, DC, and attack rolls, making you even more dangerous in combat with your spells. Alright, so that is it for the equipment. I'll now see you in the combat showcase. Alright, so here we are the Flaming Fists Barracks for the about showcase. Before combat started, I did drink an elixir of Battle Mage's Prowess to get a little bit more spell save, DC, and attack rolls. Also did let the combat issue progress so that it's our Faerie Fire Bard's turn. Alright, so this is perfect situation because normally whenever you would want to cast Faerie Fire, you want to cast it on as many enemies as possible so that you don't have... so that you use less space spell slots on it, right? So let's see if any of them will succeed their saving throw. Okay, quite unfortunate. So they all succeeded their saving throws, or well, they failed their saving throws, so that we didn't get our cutting words reaction triggered. But generally, if any saving throw that enemy would succeed, and you can look at the rolls, let's say if they're missing 1, 2, or 3 numbers from failure, you can use your cutting words to add your bardic inspiration to the difficulty class, and then they will most likely potentially fail the saving throw. And now, if we look at our enemies, they have Faerie Fire on them. They have we have advantage against them for 10 turns, and they also have mental fatigue. So what this does now is they have a -2 penalty to wisdom, intelligence, and charisma saving throws. So generally, the next turn you would want to probably cast some other debilitating spell on them. Now, since for the sake of the showcase, I'm gonna go ahead and try to do that right now if I can find this potion of speed. There you go. And now, let's try to see if we can confuse them. So we have 90% chance on the wizard, 95 on the fighters, 65 on the cleric because she has high spell save DC, and then on this Lupus Optimus, it's another 95. So I believe the -1 that we get here, it's around 5%. So we have 10% extra success chance, or they have 10% extra failure chance, or it might be something along those lines. So let's see. And here we go. They're all managed to be confused. And now basically they will either save, they will either skip the turns or attack each other or just wander around aimlessly, which is what we want, right? We have basically disabled all of them from combat almost fully efficiently. Of course, if we cast a heroic pattern, that would just fully make them skip their turns. But if we attack them, then they get broken out of the confusion or out of the heroic pattern. But you know, that is about it for the build. I hope you enjoyed. I would appreciate if you leave a like and subscribe for more Baldur's Gate 3 content, and I'll see you in the next one.